Hello, and welcome back to the Black Dental Reserve podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bridget White, and today we're joined by Dr. Patrice Smith from Mandeville, Jamaica. She's an orthodontist in her undergraduate degrees in both dental hygiene and biology from Northern Caribbean University and Medgar Evers College of the City University of New York. Dr. Smith went on to receive her Doctor of Dental Surgery from Howard University in Washington, D.C., and immediately went on to complete her residency, obtaining a certificate in orthodontics and dental facial orthopedics. She is a practicing orthodontist here in Washington, D.C. at her private practice, Infinity Orthodontics. Dr. Smith is also the co-founder of Dental Helping Hands, a nonprofit that provides dental health services and education to underserved communities in developing countries. She has a huge online presence, especially on social media at Dr. Unorthodox, where you can follow her journey as a provider, business owner, and mother. So welcome, Dr. Smith. How are you doing?
I am great. That was a nice introduction. You did better than I could have ever put it.
I feel
Thank
like
you.
that's such. I feel like I had to condense. You've done so much. I didn't mention your candle company, and just so many things that you do out, for philanthropic efforts. But just tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about you. What led you into dentistry? And just, we really want to know, where did it start? Was it grade school? Was it high school? Tell us about how you got into dentistry.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, I was born on the beautiful island Jamaica. I'm actually from Mandeville, Jamaica. That's right in the middle of the country. And my parents were actually business people growing up. My dad and my mom owned a string or a chain of supermarkets on the island. My dad was also into real estate. And at some period of his life, he was a politician. And so I had no dental or no healthcare background whatsoever. However, if you know anything about the islands, we start school at around 3 years old and we graduate high school at around 16 years old. At some point in high school, you have to choose a track, and that kind of follows you through college. Well, I chose a business track because that's what I knew. That was my example growing up. Um, I graduated high school, then I started college, and I actually started college, at the Northern Caribbean University under a business track. I was doing business administration, and I did one semester of that, and I really hated it. I don't think I did well in any of my subjects. And so after that first semester, I brought my report home, showed it to my dad. So I was like, okay, Dad, I'm not doing well in these subjects. I don't like I don't like it. And so I have to do something else. And so he was a little disappointed, but then he encouraged me to explore other options. We had a business. We have, my dad has so many different kinds of friends. And so he kind of asked his friends to kind of help me to find my path. And so there are different friends that he had me shadow. And one of those friends was a dentist. And I really enjoyed my shadowing with him. And I really gravitated towards dentistry, going to his practice on the weekends and during the summers. And so I remember just going in, people would come in one way, they'd leave another way. And he was really impacting people's lives in a very positive way. But, to everybody else, he was just a dentist around the corner. But to me, it was like, wow, he was really making
Yeah.
an impact. And so I gravitated towards dentistry. And so I went that route. I went home and told
Okay.
my dad, okay, I want to do dentistry.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's so, your parents, regardless of what you went into, it sounds like your parents are very supportive and really encouraged you to consider what was available, whether it was business or medicine. What were your favorite procedures? What were the procedures that intrigued you the most, that you were like, oh, this is something I want to do every day?
That's interesting because when I was just observing, everything looked interesting. Especially root
Mhm.
canals. Like, oh my God. Especially when the dentist would go in, he would open the canal and pull this white thing out and he would tell me this is the nerve. Mind blown. Mind blown. Right. But this was from a space of observing. Of course, we'll get into the story a little bit later when I actually started practicing those things and how my interest shifted. But observing when I was 16 years old, yeah, everything looked very fun.
Yeah. Well, then, I mean, yeah. So, how did you? It sounds like you decided to go into ortho and dental school. I guess as you realized, maybe obturating a
Yeah.
canal was not 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 something you wanted to do every day. So, did you tell me about how you chose orthodontics as a specialty?
Well, I'll get into that, but I wanted to go into like kind of my journey into dentistry because
Yes.
I think it would be interesting to know like how did you even get to where you got to attending Howard University when you were in Jamaica? And
Hmm.
so this is a fun fact. Every dentist that I grew up seeing in my country, when I asked them, "Hey, where did you go to dental school?" 90% of them told me they went to Howard University. And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
automatically I was like, okay, that's it. That's where I'm
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
And so it was always this thing in my mind, like, I'm going to Howard. Like, it wasn't even a question
Yeah.
because everybody I knew. And, it really shows how representation matters. Because I'm sure if
Definitely.
they had told me different things, like I went to NYU or if I went, another school, I would have thought to go somewhere else. But because majority of people that I knew that were so great and, in their own right went to Howard, I was of that same mindset of, well, that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I think that it's reported that 45% of Black dentists went to HBCU university, whether Meharry or Howard
Yeah.
University, for their dental degree. And then I believe 75% of Black dentists went to HBCU for undergrad. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
definitely, yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, HBCUs are so important in the production of all professionals, especially dentists.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, the same thing for me. I grew up in Philly, and my orthodontist went to Penn, a Black orthodontist. My oral surgeon actually went to Howard University.
Okay.
But in Philadelphia, we're lucky. We have two dental schools right there in the city: Temple University in Philadelphia and University of Pennsylvania. So that definitely was something that seems to have been very impactful. That
It was.
your own dentist and your a friend of your father went to Howard University. How did you find Howard? Did you love it? Was it everything you expected? Were you nervous? Was it overwhelming? What was it like?
You know, attending Howard is like it's hard to explain. It's such an experience. It's one of those things where you have to attend to even know what I'm referring to because you know it's such a nurturing environment. And speaking to other of my colleagues who went to different schools, everybody has had different experiences.
Hmm.
And of course, everybody that has gone to Howard has their own set of unique experiences. But one thing that I would say is a consensus across us all is how nurturing an environment it is, and how everybody just, I tell everybody, when you go to Howard, everybody just is rooting for you. It's a racist, I'm rooting for everybody black. That's what I feel like Howard is. And
That's
not just
wonderful.
anybody black, not just anybody, not just black people for sure, because Howard University is diverse,
Hmm.
but it is such a nice environment that is nurturing, and everybody wants to see you win, and everybody wants to see you succeed. And there's no, at least in my experience, there weren't any cutthroat um, types of interactions. Everybody kind of helped each other, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, and so it was tough because dental school is tough. So you're gonna have those moments where it's really difficult and you're gonna question whether you chose the right path because it's so hard. And I cried so many times during dental school, like this is too hard. I don't know how I'm gonna, there's
Yeah,
gonna be that wherever you go. Um,
right.
but Howard University is such an experience.
Wow. It sounds
Really
like it.
enjoyed
It sounds
I
like it.
enjoyed my time there. And those of us who went to Howard, we can talk about different things attending Howard
Mhm.
University. Um, but I would say it's a unique experience for sure.
Yeah, and I've heard from other alums, Howard Dental alums, that I believe 30% uh of specialists, it's that's where we're getting many of our Black specialists. So
Great.
yeah, so I think having gone to Penn, we had a few, I think we had nine. We had a class that did have sizable population of Black students. I believe it was
Mhm.
9 or 11. I can't recall. That was way back. I was class of 2007. But,
Yeah.
but, in terms of specialists, Black specialists, I believe we're very low at 3%. Of dental specialties, equal to that in the, of all dentists. And that is remarkably low compared to our 13%
Absolutely.
national population.
Right.
So yeah, I think that is very important. Regardless of the rigor of the academic program, support from faculty is
Yeah.
essential, and just a nurturing environment. And yes, it's supposed to be hard.
Right.
It's not magic. My mother always says it's not magic. Nobody's gonna do a spell and it's gonna go in your head. You have to read the book, read it twice,
Yeah.
get a tutor, get some extra
Oh,
sleep, get some extra coffee. And it
yeah.
was an emotional time. I think I tell people it's also 4 years of your early, adulthood in your
Yeah.
life. You're going through things may happen, tragedies, family tragedies, relationships,
Yeah.
politics. The world around you is changing, and you really have to commit to that
Yeah.
program. So I'm glad that you had that good experience. Was there a faculty in orthodontics that inspired you at Howard? How did you come to choose orthodontics as
Orthodontics.
yeah?
Well, I kind of developed a liking for orthodontics. I started dental school. I just wanted to get into dental school. That's it. But then when I started my first year and I was introduced to the specialties, I was of the mindset of oral surgery, oral and maxillofacial surgery, or orthodontics. And if you know anything about those two specialties, they're like night and day. But I didn't know that then. I didn't know that in my first year of dental school. And so, what I liked about oral and maxillofacial surgery is again the huge impact you have on someone's life. Reconstructing jaws and giving someone a whole new kind of lease on life, and that was so intriguing to me. But of course, you matriculate through dental school and you realize that, oh, it's not just that. It's a lot more
Yeah.
involved. It's a lot more involved. And, exploring the different specialties, I just took a liking towards orthodontics. I would say the latter part of my first year going into my second year of dental school, I started exploring orthodontics a little bit more. I started shadowing different orthodontists. I started going to the orthodontic clinic at my dental school and just seeing what the residents were doing. I started doing externships at different orthodontic programs. And then I got even more involved and started doing some research in orthodontics. And I just went on a deep dive and I realized, you know what? This is becoming like an obsession. And I think I like it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of geared my all my experiences throughout dental school towards orthodontics, and I didn't find any other specialties that resonated with me as much as orthodontics did. Number
Okay.
one,
Wow.
it's clean, right? I don't have to deal with any blood and
Yeah, we just talked.
all.
We just early before we started recording. Dr. Smith and I talked about PPE,
Yes.
and I always say, don't believe what you see on this screen is not how I appear at work. I am covered up like the CDC. Believe me.
Yeah, we wear PPE too, but we're visible. You can see me. But no, I love orthodontics. It's really a personality thing, though. As much as people think, I'm not as extroverted as I seem. I'm a lot more cerebral and reserved. And
Hmm.
you know what they say about orthodontics is a thinking man's profession. And I
Hmm.
really
Indeed.
love that aspect of it. Like, um, when dental students come to shadow, I equate it to that part of the DATs that perceptual ability portion of the DATs.
Oh,
If you
okay. Yeah,
remember, where
I
you
do.
have
I do.
really spatially, it's like using your imagination and spatially moving things around and kind of like doing like a Rubik's Cube, Tetris type of thing. cleaner. And that's really orthodontics. And so when I get into my head, I really get in there, and I'm really cerebral. And I am not somebody who is like quick on my feet. Like, you cannot put me in anybody's ER. And so and so I find that orthodontics resonates with me because of that. Um, Patients typically love seeing the orthodontist. There's no fear
Yeah.
of the
Hmm.
dentist when it comes to orthodontics. Like I mentioned before, it's clean. You're not dealing with a lot of blood and gore. And so it's really pleasant. And I can take my time. Nothing in orthodontics is irreversible,
Mm.
you know?
Okay.
And so you don't have those situations where you can get yourself. Not saying that it happens with other specialists, but you have to know yourself to that own self be true.
Yeah.
You can't put me in a life or death situation where I have to make that kind of decision in somebody's life. And that's just me knowing myself. I have time to sit and I have time to process. I have time to do a thorough treatment plan. And I don't have to do it on the spot. I can take a day. I can sit and stew it over and then come up with a proper, appropriate plan for somebody. And so I really like that aspect of it.
Yeah. I've read that. I tell people that all the time also. I remember reading articles um, years ago. I think when I first started working, and orthodontics is the most intellectual part of dentistry. It really is. I mean, you're dealing with growth patterns. You're
Yeah.
using technology, like you said, your creativity, your perceptual ability.
Yeah.
And then you're changing quality of life. You're usually
Yeah.
making a person look better, so their
Yeah.
confidence, reflects higher. Are there any trends that I mean, having gone to Howard and you did residency at Howard as well, and then practicing in DC, are there any trends that you see, orthodontic trends, or, whether they are chief concerns that are particular to the Black population? I've read a study about anterior posterior
Mhm.
protrusion and lip protrusion. So can you talk about that, like in terms of what our community is seeking in orthodontic therapy?
Yeah, well, every race has its, how should I put this? Well, in the Black community, we do have a disposition towards protrusion, like an anterior posterior protrusion where your teeth are proclined. And that's just from, what should I say, archaeological perspective. It's just how we're built, you know? And so even if you study archaeologically remains from or predecessors or ancestors, you'll find that the skeletal pattern, we're more protrusive in the lower half of our face, and that follows through generations. And so when my Black patients come in, I expect that. It's not necessarily something that I have to fix, but I know that it's just the makeup of, it's just how us as Black people are made. The opposite of that are, say, my Asian population, where it's the opposite, where they're expected to have more of a flat face. Now, if an Asian person came in with the kind of protrusion that a Black person has, they would think that they were ugly. But you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's their words, not mine.
Right, right. I
you
see.
know
Hmm.
and so different cultures, different races have their own standards of beauty.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so
Indeed.
if another race came in with that same kind of protrusion, they would deem it unaesthetic, whereas if a Black person comes in with that protrusion, it is actually aesthetic.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well,
it's not necessarily
yeah.
something that I need to fix on a
Right.
Black person. um,
Yeah, and that's I mean, I would think, especially like you said, your lived experience,
yeah.
especially having grown up in Jamaica, living in DC for so many years, and then your own scientific study
Hmm.
really has given you an edge with that. And then appreciating, the cross-cultural
Yeah,
aesthetics. So, and then
exactly.
how we value aesthetics as a society based on certain standards of beauty. I'm
Yeah.
sure that comes into it as well.
It does, and it's so interesting when you're treating a diverse population, because
Mhm.
each race, each culture has their own standard of beauty, and you have to keep that in mind when you're doing your orthodontics, because orthodontics, contrary to popular belief, is not just straightening teeth. You're taking into consideration the entire face, their profile. You're taking into consideration, like I said, like race, culture, race, and their standards of beauty. I could never, um, I'll go back to my Asian and Black examples. I could
Mhm.
never have an Asian person come in and they're a little protrusive and leave them that way. They would think that I haven't done a good job, and so
Wow.
those things,
Yeah.
they come with that. They're more agreeable to having extractions to reduce that proclination and flatten their face. They think that is beautiful. If I do that on a Black person, they would tell me that I made them ugly and now I look like an old person, because if
Uh-huh.
their profile changes, I'm
Yeah.
again, my words.
Right. You're giving your actual experience. No, this is
Yeah.
your clinical feedback. No, this is
Mhm.
great. Thank you, Dr. Smith. I mean,
Sure.
I'm curious. I'm going to go and read more about that. Maybe we can
Oh
chat
yeah.
about that. I mean, let's talk about you practicing in DC. I think you told me casually once there are very few Black orthodontists. How many in Washington, in the district, not the area, but how many do you believe are practicing in Washington, D.C.?
You know, that's a really good question, and I have this conversation with my patients every day. Because as far as, and I do my research every day, as far as I'm concerned, I'm the only Black female practicing orthodontics currently in Washington, D.C. I'm not
Wow.
talking about Maryland or Virginia, in Washington, D.C. itself. And
Goodness.
that is startling to me, considering that Howard
Yeah.
University is right up the street.
Right. Yeah. It sounds, and then, I mean, believe me, if you're the only one and it's shocking to you, I would
Yeah.
imagine that people just assume, Black orthodontists are just walking around
Yeah.
all over K Street, all over Petworth. So yeah, I mean, what do you have, what's your call to dentists or, aspiring dentists, people that haven't considered the profession? What is your call to urge people to specialize in dentistry? I mean, there people reports say that barriers to specialty include, of course, financial obstacles,
Yeah.
having just rushing to want to actually make an income because of the long journey. Just college and dental school alone is 10 years after high school, give or take. And then, of course, there's just committing to finding a program.
Yeah.
Were there any barriers to your particular, entry? And then what's your call to urge more people to get into the profession?
In any specialty program, I think they're all quite competitive. They're all really competitive to get into, and that's really because you're looking at each year in each dental school, the class sizes are at least on average 70 to 80 students, right? And that's
Hmm.
dental school. But when you start to get into the specialties, we're looking at a class size of between 3 and 6. You know what I mean? And there are not very many specialty programs in the country. And so there are a lot of dental schools, but fewer specialty programs. So when you're trying to funnel 80 students per class into these programs that accept 3 and 6 students per year, then it's really competitive. And
Hmm.
so I believe that's one of the reasons why we have a lower number of specialists. Sorry.
Hmm.
Um, and you mentioned too that people just want to get out there and get to work. A lot of my colleagues would tell me too that why would I need to specialize if I can become a general dentist, but I can do that too. Like it's a general dentist. I can do anything under the scope of dentistry, and that is true. But when you specialize, you concentrate on one area that you perfect, and we need more specialists out here. And I'll tell you, based on my experiences, when my patients come to see me and I have to give them a referral to another specialist, lived experience again, when they're a Black patient, they typically ask me, Doc, can you send me to a Black specialist? My Black patients come in most of the time asking me, because that's where they feel comfortable. I feel
Right. Yeah.
comfortable, seeing Black, and that's just preference. Um,
Yeah.
and sometimes I do have a hard time finding my specialists of color, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But we do our best. And
Yeah,
so
I
that
mean
would
it.
be my
Yeah,
urge. That would be my urge. We need more specialists out here. You're needed. People are
yeah.
asking. Patients want it. They're asking.
And now, and I mean, I've been practicing maybe 17 years. Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm hearing that, I'm hearing that more and more,
Mhm. Yeah.
just blatantly from my Black patients. Please, send me to a Black oral surgeon, send me
Yeah.
to a Black endodontist. And the medical studies show that patients, have better outcomes with
Yes,
providers that look like them, particularly Black patients.
that's
And
true.
unfortunately, that stems from a legacy of mistreatment, mistrust,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
fear, from
Exactly.
providers. So that's excellent. That's a strong. And I would say one thing that people don't consider is there also isn't one, path, that one way to, one set of steps, to get into specialty. Some people realize later, after they've been practicing general dentistry, that they do want to specialize, and then, or they do research for a year. I have a
Yeah.
friend. She she did general dentistry, then she did pediatrics, then she moved abroad to England and got her British dental license, came back to the United States, and all of that experience, helps her as a provider. But it's dentistry has allowed her to do a diverse, set of things. So that's
Yeah.
also important, especially students to know, like, just because you didn't match for ortho while you were a fourth year dental student doesn't mean
Right.
that's the end of the road.
Oh no,
So
absolutely not. You can
yeah,
jump into the specialties later on. Some people need a little bit more experience under their belt to figure out what it is that they really like. And
yeah,
some people want to specialize, but let me make sure that I'm making the right decision. So they'll take a year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes more to figure it out and make a solid decision. And that's fine. I have colleagues who've taken 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, sometimes 10 year gaps. And
yeah,
then they,
yeah.
okay, now I'm sure this is what I want to do. You
Yeah, for
know,
sure. I think that people were, oh, my grandmother used to say, you're in a rush, but you're just going to work for the rest of your life. I was a late
exactly.
bloomer. What's the rush? But I was a late bloomer with healthcare. I didn't decide to
Yeah.
even, become a dentist till I was out of college.
Mhm.
And I felt rushed in school. I did post-bac pre-med. That was a year, and then dental school. And so I was like, I got to get to work. And I didn't even know, other than ortho. I mean, I knew my oral surgeon understood the teeth, but I never thought about surgery and dental school and his training. I really just didn't think about it. And so when I got to dental school, I learned about the specialties in school. I didn't realize, I didn't know there was something called an endodontist. Luckily, I hadn't had one.
Yeah.
So so I think that it's, we always feel rushed, but now of course we have the internet and we have so much more
Yeah.
information available. So you're in school, you've gone to school. It sounds like I know that when I first connected with you, you were in Atlanta, or you weren't here in DC.
No,
Where
never
were you?
Atlanta. I haven't been to
Houston?
Atlanta. But no, when I graduated from residency at Howard University, I moved to, it was south, but it was North
Oh,
Carolina.
North
I was in
Carolina.
North,
Okay.
yeah. Close enough.
I just,
Close
what?
enough.
There was so much going on. I remember the pandemic was first
Yeah.
happening,
Gosh.
and you were taking a trip, and I was like, oh my gosh, is she gonna be okay? And then next thing I know, you're
Yeah,
in
that's right.
DC. Yeah.
Right. That is so right. So I moved to North Carolina, did my first associateship there. Then I actually lived in Pittsburgh for a while.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I did for a short while, and then I was working in Ohio though, which is only a 45-minute drive away. Um, and then I moved to DC and opened my practice in 2020, like right in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, the pandemic hit in March at some point, and I remember I had taken a trip with a few of my colleagues. Some of them are dentists, some of them are orthodontists. I took a trip with them. It was a kind of a girls trip. We went to Colombia, and the day we were coming back from Colombia is a day when the world shut down, and we made it out of the last American Airlines flight that was leaving the country. It was a whirlwind. So as soon as I got back, everything was like locked down.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. That's crazy. Scary. I'm glad y'all got back and everybody was okay. Yeah, I had no idea. I think social media is it's amazing because you get a glimpse into somebody's life.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before, that people have this idea of the lifestyle, of dentistry, of an orthodontist, and then you really want to make sure that that messaging is accurate. So can you talk about that,
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
the
I
industry.
love social media. I've met so many amazing people through social media. You're one of them, and it's just opened up my world so much. And I really love it for that reason. And I love that people are using it for educational purposes. It's broadening people's horizons, and I love that about it. But what I'm also seeing that I want people to be like very aware of is sometimes some misrepresentation. And I tell you why I say this. It's because I have students from time to time who come in and they tell me they would like to come into shadow, which is fine. That's always welcome. But then I can always tell the students who have a genuine interest in dentistry and orthodontics and they really want mentorship or guidance into navigating it because there's no point in trying to figure it out on your own, especially
Mhm.
if you found someone who's done it before. And I'm all for that. But then there are others who come in who wants me to tell them about this dream life, and I'm like, that does not exist. It
Yeah.
is hard work over here,
Mhm.
and so it's orthodontics is great. The dentistry is great. Don't get me wrong, and we can show the positive sides of it, and it's a very rewarding career. It's quite lucrative, and I'm not gonna hide that. But we have to be careful, especially in this age of social media, that we don't mislead people. Because sometimes I come across some things, and I'm like, you just graduated. There's no way you're living that lifestyle right now. Like it's a facade sometimes. I'm gonna be honest. Like don't do that to people because people are watching and they're
Right.
expecting that. And when they get out and it's not that, then they get all depressed and then they think it's not worth it because they've been sold a lie. Stop doing that. I hate seeing that on the
Yeah,
internet.
there's nothing. I think this whole get rich quick or get
Yeah.
to the flex level fast,
Mhm.
advance to go and collect $200, that's
Yeah.
just not it's I mean, unless you're born into inheritance is really the only way. I mean, everybody else has to, take the steps. And I think that that's one thing I will say is where we really have to encourage young students, young Black students, and remind them that although it's a long journey, it's worth it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're going to spend 10, 15 years in your training, but then you're going to have a great quality of life. You're going to enjoy
Exactly.
what you do. You're going
Yeah.
to change people's lives. You're going to meet a diverse set of people. What do you think? What do you feel is the most rewarding thing about having your own practice? Tell us a little bit about Infinity Orthodontics.
Oh, absolutely. This is my favorite topic.
Perfect.
I before I owned my practice, before I went into practice ownership, I first worked in private practice and I also worked in corporate. And they were all great. They had great things about them. I learned a whole lot from each experience and I'm really grateful for them. But having your own practice gives you a level of freedom and autonomy that you can't necessarily get from it's possible. I haven't found that you can't necessarily get from having a typical job. Um, and so I'm not against jobs. Please don't get this. Please don't misconstrue this. But practice ownership. One, um, I have a child. I have a 2-year-old,
Mhm. Yes,
and so you
Braxton.
start to think about things like legacy. There's that, and then you start to think about um, incorporating things into your practice that is going to really be different and cutting edge and technologically advanced and off the age, off the times. And having my own practice allows me to do that. I'm very what you would term an early adapter. so So when the technology, I'm very tech, I like to be, at least in orthodontics, tech savvy. And so when the new technologies come out, I want to be on the forefront of that. I want to try them because I really care about overall health of my patients. And so the thing about orthodontics is once you're in braces, typically you're in braces for about 24 months, 2 years. That's like the average amount of time. Now, when you're dealing with kids and teens, that age group, they're not very good at oral health, oral health care. They're not very good at it.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest. They're not really good at it. And so for 2 years, you have a decreased like um, oral health. You know, if you're not keeping up with your dental appointments every 6 months, but even if you are in between, they're not brushing properly, they're not flossing properly, even without braces. You put braces on and
Right.
that just sends
Oh,
everything
yeah.
to a tailspin,
Yeah.
you know? And so, and
Yeah.
that's for 2 years. So I really like the fact that in my practice, I'm a digital, 100% digital practice. So what that means is even my braces that I put on my patients' teeth, they are 100% custom, digitally fabricated, 3D printed. Um, when I say custom, it's like a fingerprint to that patient's teeth. And what I do is I program it so that whatever movement I want from each tooth, I program it into each tooth. So once I put the bracket on their teeth, it starts to make those moves pretty immediate, right? And so what that does is it makes my treatment much more efficient, which means it cuts down our treatment time. So what would take 24 months in my practice takes 12 months. And
Wow.
yes. And
That's
so
amazing.
that kind of is one of the things that kind of sets me apart in my area. But I love that because, especially for my kids and teens, I don't want to keep them in braces longer than I absolutely 100% need to. And then, of course, for my adults, they don't want to be in braces. First of all,
Mhm.
they know that they need to correct something, but they don't want to be in any kind of whatever it is, whatever option it is for a long period of time. And so if I can convince them to go into braces and get in and get out, then that's what they really want. And so I like that about practice ownership. You know, I think I'm a natural leader. And so
Mhm.
and so practice ownership kind of just goes in line with that. I
Mhm.
found for myself that when I'm in settings where I'm not able to assert myself and have a say in things, it doesn't really go nicely because I'm just not going to do what I'm told because you're telling me to do it. Because sometimes when you're telling me to do things, it doesn't make sense, and I'm not going to do things that doesn't make sense. And so, practice ownership eliminates those things for me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I agree. I think number one, the autonomy of owning your own practice. I know it's a lot of work, and definitely it's stressful being a business owner. But
it is.
I have worked in groups. I've worked for organizations, companies. I worked for the military, and yeah, if the leadership is not positive and not you're not aligned with the leadership perspective, then it really does create, some challenges for you personally. So, and it sounds like, I mean, I will say following you on Instagram is for me, I love it because you make everything look like fun and aesthetically pleasing and easy and perfect. And I think, gosh, I would, man, I'm like a hot mess over here. I'm like, I can never record anything on whether it's organizing my son's room or my office, my personal office where I do all my notes. Nothing is, it looks, arranged. But I mean, do you feel, I would say, with orthodontics, of course, you're trying to meet an ideal end goal for the aesthetic result for the patient. It does seem like you're aiming for perfection. Do you feel, are you a perfectionist by nature? Is that your personality? Is it something you feel that, do you feel any pressure to be a perfectionist, particularly as a Black woman? I mean, do you feel any additional pressure from society?
Yes, that's a resounding yes. Now, I could consider myself a perfectionist, even though I wouldn't have used that word. Um, But every other time that I've tried to explain what I am to other people, they're like, "Oh yeah, no, that's perfectionism." Like, no, I'm really persistent. I'm really I have stick to itiveness. Like when there's something to be done, I'm gonna do it, and I'm not gonna stop until I'm done. And this has to be right. If it's not right, it's a millimeter off. Well, it's not right. It needs to be on. It's like, you're perfectionist.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's not really perfection, but that's just the way it's supposed to be, you know. And I guess that's the word for it. But to answer your question about being a Black woman in dentistry and orthodontics, 100% yes. And
Yeah.
I've been put in those situations so many times where, you know, what's expected from someone else is, when it comes to us, it's like times three, you
Yeah,
know,
the
and
standard. Yeah.
it's so frustrating. It's a completely different standard. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a little frustrating
Yeah.
because it's like, you never asked that other person for this, but you want it out of me. It's not fair, you know? And so I find I notice that a lot. And it's very tiring.
It is.
Because you're constantly proving yourself every day, over and over and over and over. And and even if I weren't a perfectionist, I would have to be, because that's what is unfortunately expected of you. You
Yeah.
know,
And it's
people
it's
are
it's a lot of pressure.
it's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure, and people are quite unforgiving if you're
Mm.
not on point all the time. And I think
Yeah.
that's what makes, and that's the stressful part of the job. Everything
Right.
else is fun and, like you said, aesthetically pleasing and all that. But when you have to deal with that other aspect, where 100% of you is expected 100% of the time, then it becomes burdensome. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, and
I
I'm going even beyond just orthodontics. You know, you have a business, and you know, God forbid your front desk doesn't answer the phone and have a chipper voice, then it's a reflection on you all of a sudden. But if the other person's office didn't answer the phone well, it'd have been like, oh, it's fine. I understand. You're just having a bad day, but nobody is allowed to have a bad day over here.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just that double standard, and it's really tough sometimes. And so we're hard on ourselves because of that.
Yeah, it's and it's something almost we've got two things going on. Our community kind of says like buck up. Come on.
Yeah.
This is how it is for us. You have to work twice as hard. This is nothing new. But at the
Hmm.
same time, we know that if we don't the standard you're creating the standard for the next black
Yeah.
orthodontist, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
if you're not perfect, then maybe there won't be an opportunity for someone else, and that's really unfair. And in light of what we are finally acknowledging with regards to just wellness and mental health, and especially as healthcare providers, essential providers, it's
Hmm.
important for you to be able to be your authentic self, right? So whether it's how you're wearing your hair or your own brand, right? Your brand of the vibe, the energy of your office, whether I think it's not about how it's perceived, it's how you're presenting it
Yeah.
to suit your business goals. I think it's unfair. I think that's the perfect word. It's not fair, right?
It's fair,
Fair.
but here we are.
Exactly. But we still did it. So,
Yeah, exactly.
well, Dr. Smith, you are such an example. Believe me, I would say if it's not we can find another word, perfection, your aura, your vibe, your
Yeah.
je ne sais quoi, something it's what it is it's well received, and you do it well, you do it so well, so keep doing what
Thank
you're
you.
doing. Your practice is in downtown DC, right?
It is.
Is there anything you want to say to our listeners in terms of, becoming orthodontists or just getting into dentistry? Are there any remarks you want to leave with us?
You know, a year ago I wouldn't have given this advice, but I would give it now only because I've had the experience. When I started, anything, whether it's when I started in residency in orthodontics or whether it was when I started my business, I tried to fit a mold of what I thought was expected of me. And then that was even more tiring because then you realize no matter how much I try, you're still not pleasing everyone. You know what I mean? Like people are
Mhm.
still not happy. You're gonna be those people who are still not happy with whatever you're doing. And so now I am just like, you know what, just be yourself and that's it. You know? So I'll give you one example just so that people understand where I'm going with this. So in my practice, I tried, like, for example, simple music, right? So in my practice, I would like keep it real. I don't know. I would,
80s rock, light,
yeah,
yeah, soft
like
rock, or yeah.
something that was super safe that I know that nobody could ever say anything about. But then it was so incredibly drab. And I'm like, you know what? I love music. I'm gonna put a playlist together for the practice or several playlists together for the practice, and it's gonna be music that I like because I'm here
Exactly,
all
it's your
day. You come into my office for half an hour and then you leave. I'm here all day long.
right.
So then I started playing music that I liked. And now I didn't think it was music that was going to be necessarily well received by everybody, but I started just playing it because that's what I like. And so I created these playlists. This one day, I started playing Afro beats, and now I have a diverse group of patients. Like people are from everywhere.
Hmm.
And then the more I play, the more people started coming. Like, that's cool. Oh, it's fun in here. More and more and more. And then
Yeah.
what happened was people were like, what playlist is this? And then, and it's like,
Yeah.
I can, is this on Spotify? And I'm like, I'll be damned. Here I am trying to play it safe.
Yeah.
But it became a thing. Whereas like
Right.
this office always has the best playlists. But here I was trying to be safe, thinking, let me not cross the line. Let me stay in this little box. I don't want to, ruffle any.
Yeah.
And here I was playing Afro beats. I had all kinds of people bopping out to Afro beats. And I was like, huh, well, what do you know? And so my point is, and that was a very, very tiny example, but my point is, be you. Um, and not everybody's gonna like, you're not gonna be everybody's cup of tea, but it is what it is. If you try to be somebody else, you're still not gonna be everybody's cup of tea. And so that would be my one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that like it's your authentic self. The bottom line is you are providing an excellent service and you are
Exactly.
aiding a patient in his health, right? That it shouldn't matter about your playlist, but it's because what we're accustomed to seeing on TV or hearing at our dental office by the dentist who looks like
Yeah.
most of the dentists that we
Yeah.
see.
Exactly.
We're programmed. It's a bias. It's just a
It is.
natural subconscious thing that happens to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's great that have allowed yourself to let your guard down with your playlist, and hopefully that is
There's a
exempt.
lot more, but
Yeah,
that was a
right.
nice
Hopefully that's
quick
across the
example.
board. And again, I mean, just whether it's being able to cater to the needs of the aesthetic needs of a
Mhm.
certain demographic, or you know kind of lending yourself. You're sharing your culture with regards to
Yeah.
the Afro beats, or certain things that you celebrate in your office with regards to the calendar year,
Yeah.
and traditions. I mean,
Exactly.
there's a lot patients can learn about your life back in Jamaica, or your experience with your nonprofits, your mission work.
Yeah.
So that's great. Well, I need to come down there and see your office. I
Yeah.
have no excuse
Come
now. There's going to
on
be
down.
we have an open summer, so we're going to have to get together soon. But thanks so much for joining
Absolutely.
me on this Black Donor Reserve podcast, and we'll see you guys later.
Yep. Thank you so much for
All right.
having me, Bridget.
You're welcome. See you later. Bye.
Bye bye.